Today on Made in America, I've got Paul Lavoie from Carey Manufacturing. We are going to cover a wide range of topics, from tariffs to recruiting and retention to reshoring of manufacturing. It's going to be an exciting episode. Can't wait to share it with you. Welcome to the Made in America podcast, episode 2. Really excited to have Paul Lavoie, general manager of Carey Manufacturing, on with us. Paul and I have gotten to know each other through Senator Chris Murphy's Manufacturing Advisory Council. I'm really excited to have Paul with us, talk a little about Carey Manufacturing as well as his background. I think we have a lot of interesting topics to cover, so let's get started. Thanks for coming on, Paul.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Great.
So listen, it's a Made in America podcast, so we start off with our first question, which is, what do you guys make and why do you make it?
Well, we make catches, latches, and handles, and we also have another product line called Amatom Electronic Hardware, where we make hardware for the electronic industry, which includes handles, spacers, standoffs. So if you've ever opened a first aid kit, there's a good chance you've used our product.
Okay. So. All right. There you go. And you always want those latches to work, right? When you need to open that first aid kit.
Absolutely.
And so why does Carey make what they make? What's the story of why it was catches, latches, and handles and that initial part? I know is it Amatom, is that how you pronounce it? Amatom. I know that was an acquisition. So we'll get to that. But maybe talk a little about the history, the origin story of Carey.
Sure. So back in 1981, Jack Carey, our founder, was in the Pratt & Whitney apprentice program and decided he wanted to have little manufacturing in his background, in his family, and a little bit of a streak of entrepreneurship. So he decided he wanted to get into manufacturing, and he went out and bought a couple of Bridgeport machines and put them in his garage and got a job from somebody that was kind of doing some small business as well that he could do at night.
Okay.
So he started to manufacture some products in the really automotive industry, and started to do that kind of in the evenings, and then got picked up a couple of projects from a couple of other companies, and actually started out in kind of back in the 80s and 90s making the latches that went on the top of your air cleaners in the cars. So we used to have the big air filters.
Okay.
Have the clamp that would clamp down the air filter.
Yep.
We started with manufacturing. Those is really what got us started into the kind of the catch and latch line. And then it grew from there. It just grew from really building we have a catalog of over 600,000 products.
Wow.
That we manufacture. And those are all based on different materials, finishes, and all of that. So it grew from there and became, the Carey Manufacturing catch and latch line. And then, as you mentioned, we acquired in 2003 Amatom Electronic Hardware, which was the old New Haven manufacturing company. So that brought in the Amatom line. So those two product lines together have really created what Carey Manufacturing is today.
And so what's the complementary part between sort of the original catch and latch businesses went from one product to over 600,000? What's kind of the integration between that and the Amatom line? Like, why are those two things working well together?
There really isn't a lot. It was they're two very different customer bases. They're very different products. There are some crossovers in handles. But they tend to have very different customer bases. So our go-to-market strategy in the Amatom side is through distributors. Okay. So you've got a lot of large distributors that are buying our products and then selling them to small original equipment manufacturers that would use a spacer or a standoff and kind of those and some of those products. The Carey model is original equipment manufacturers. We're looking for people that are building the boxes that house the first aid kits, building the cases, and we do a lot of case hardware, a lot of box hardware, a lot of handles in that area. And we do a fair amount of work in the aircraft industry, and that's usually on the Amatom side. We make high-end handles for airplanes.
Okay. So the Amatom side does have handles as well?
Yeah, it has some handles as well. So there's a little bit of a crossover on both of that, but they're actually two very separate lines with two separate customer bases.
Okay.
But from
so let's just dig in on that a little bit. I don't know how much history you have. I know you and Jack go back a long way, and we'll get to that. But I think there's a lot of, because Carey's not a huge business, right? So it's a small, medium-sized business, and I think a lot of folks that listen to the podcast that are interested in growing their business, there's a lot of people thinking about what we call inorganic growth, right? Mergers and acquisitions. Right. So Carey's been able to do that successfully. I mean, 2003 acquisition that's still going strong. Yep. Here we are 16 years later. So I think that's pretty exciting, and I don't know how much insight you have, but if you could share, how did that kind of happen? What prompted it, the acquisition to happen, since the lines aren't directly connected to each other? I guess maybe how did it happen, and then how has it been able to be successful for such a long period of time?
Yeah, so I think back in 2003, Amatom had pretty much with the current management kind of run its course.
Okay.
I don't know if it was bankrupt or but it wasn't a healthy business at all.
So the business, it was not a thriving business that Jack took over.
I wouldn't say a thriving business, but it was it's a very well-recognized brand in the industry. So it had been around since 1957.
Yep.
So, we still get projects that have prints that are dated in the 60s and 70s. and then it's the same product. So
a blast from the past, sure.
It's pretty interesting when you get, look at that print, and
the long tail, not of the internet, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's got, there was lots of work that was done there. And I think it was just a great bolt-on that it was probably presented to Jack in a way that just made sense for him to bring it in, and it kept the interesting thing about it is you don't know this, certainly don't know this at the time, but in 2001 we had sent all the Carey Manufacturing work to China.
Okay.
So now we were no longer a manufacturer.
You were basically
2001 to 2003. We weren't a manufacturer. We were a distributor of our own products.
Okay.
So
designed here, but then manufactured in China and shipped back.
That's correct. So the acquisition of Amatom got us back to being a manufacturer. So along with the product line came the equipment and came kind of some of the people. We actually still have, I think, 1 or 2 people that actually worked at Amatom in 2003 still working for us.
Good.
And so it got us back into that, to still be a
manufacturing, kind of back to that. Right. So let's actually dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So what was causing, well, maybe before we get into it, let's just do a little bit of background about how long you've known Jack. Because I think, someone that looks into your background, and we'll talk about that too, you've only been with Carey for a little over 2 years.
Correct.
So some people might say, well, how do you know so much about the history and the background? And maybe, Paul, you could explain, why do you know so much about the background of Carey Manufacturing?
Well, Jack and I share something in common. We were both smart enough to marry the Leone sisters.
Okay, so. There you go. Not the same sister, though, as it turns out.
They're what, 5 years apart, I think.
Okay.
So Jack's wife and my wife are sisters.
Okay, great.
So Jack's my brother-in-law. Jack's my oldest son's godfather, godparents. So I've known Jack for 33, 34 years.
Okay. Which Carey, I think, just hit 35 years.
Yes.
Last year, I think, right? In 2018. So you've known him pretty much since the beginning of Carey Manufacturing.
Right. So you're kind of grown up around the business, with the business, and certainly knew about it and knew about a lot of what was going on in the business, what their products were, the customer base, and it's a family business. So it's, my sister-in-law works there and
comes up at Thanksgiving and whatnot.
Yeah, it does. Right. It does.
Yeah, because I think Lori, your sister-in-law, and Jack founded the company together, right? Correct. So she's been a big part of it. And just before we get back to Carey, let's just dig a little bit about your personal history. You and I haven't talked about it too much, but I know from a little bit of research that you've started off in, I think, the grocery space.
I did.
Back in the day.
I did.
And you've done business coaching. You've done some other marketing and kind of got into, I don't know if it's manufacturing, but through like editor engineering.
Yep.
Some it's manufacturing related. I know they make some products and do some stuff. Yeah. Maybe just talk a little bit about how, your grocery beginnings kind of landed you in manufacturing and through coaching. Because I think looking at your background and being myself somebody who not only an entrepreneur, but a passion for business, could understand where at family events it would be interesting to talk about and dig in those conversations. And you guys probably had a lot in common. So it was no surprise to me that Jack kept encouraging you to get into the business and finally wore you down.
He did.
And now you're in. Yeah, exactly. Here we are.
I'm here.
So just talk a little about the background and how you kind of went through your career. Just give us kind of that.
Yeah.
That
so
trajectory.
I'm second generation, supermarket industry. That's where my father worked. And that's where, when I turned 16, went and got a job and kind of fell in love with it. You might remember First National Supermarkets, Finest and Edwards.
Yep.
That's where I'd worked. And, I was a store manager and kind of had worked in the corporate office and had a pretty decent career there. And then I spent a good amount of my career in spaces that sold to retailers. So I went to work for a company called Act Media, which was in-store marketing, instant coupon machines, shopping cart advertising.
Yeah, I think News America had a big division, right? So like in-store.
News America bought us.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, there you go.
So we were Act Media. The great coupon wars of the 80s that nobody knows about, or actually the 90s that nobody knows about. we had a product that was $100 million in revenue that generated $90 million a year in free cash flow.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
90% net margin?
Yeah. So
that's pretty strong.
Net.
Yeah.
So News America decided they wanted a piece of that. And I spent
you could understand why.
Yeah. So I spent a year of my life and the way that we worked is that we had exclusive contracts with retailers.
Is it possible for us to get back in that business, Paul?
Yeah, I know.
Because
trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me, we'll be sitting in a room going, how much money will you spend to defend this kind of product?
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's $90 million a year.
A year, right.
So I spent a year really kind of building. So it was all based on retail base, right? You go to a General Mills and say, we have 36,000 retailers under exclusive contract to put coupons on the shelf in front of your product. So News America was coming in trying to peel off that retail base. So I spent most of my time doing that. It ended up where News America bought.
They said, "Why fight? We can just own you."
So yeah. Right. So if they couldn't beat it, so they couldn't beat us, so they bought us.
Okay.
So I ended up getting recruited out of there and going to a technology company, electronic shelf labels, that again sold their technology product to retailers.
So the connection there was not the product, but the end customer.
Well, it was. It was actually the board member of Electronic Retailing Systems was asked, who do you know in the kind of the retail world. And the office were right across the street. When I sat in my new office, my old team would look out and see,
hey, Paul.
It's pretty funny. And so we were a startup funded with some outside investor money, and a product that never really took off.
Happens.
And so we actually bought a self-checkout company. So the company that we brought was the innovator of the self-checkout systems that you now see in retail.
Okay.
So I was the head of sales for the first self-checkout systems that were introduced at like Stop and Shop in those areas. So, and then, that got bought by IBM. So,
is that why Jack? Do you think Jack maybe hired you, Paul, because of your history of building up businesses that then get sold for high multiples? Is that like the long term? Is that his exit strategy?
There.
Okay,
we might be getting there because that story continues. So I ended up at a company called American Payment Systems that processed walk-in bill payments, and they process walk-in bill payments through retail outlets. Okay, so that's kind of where that connection was there, and we built that company from it was like 20 million to 60 million in 3 years, and we were a subsidiary of United Illuminating, so they sold us for $110 million to check-free. So,
you might end up with a lot of job offers after this podcast, Paul.
So after that, if you can gone through probably a 12 to 15 year stint of growing companies, flying all over the country. I have 4 children and a wonderful wife, and we got bought by CheckFree, and they provided me with an exciting opportunity. At the time, they had moved me into the general manager role, so I was running the business through the transition, and they provided me with a great opportunity, but it was in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I went home and told my wife, and my wife said, "Well," she goes, "that really sounds great, honey." She said, "I hope your paycheck's direct deposit. We'll all miss you."
We'll miss you, yeah. Message received.
Yeah, so we're not moving to Atlanta. So. Right. So at that point in time, I went and bought a business coaching franchise. I kind of got off the corporate wheel, if you will. I had my kids.
So a good example of maybe taking some of your own experience and looking back and going, hey, maybe I can start a business off of there, but not having had the experience of starting one, you thought, well, maybe I'll buy into a franchise.
Buy into a franchise. Sure. Allow me to help other businesses, learn from me, from what, and to grow their businesses. And that was great. It was I had the resources to be able to do that. My kids were going into high school. They were playing sports. I didn't want to be the dad that missed everything. So I, if I get at a hockey game at 3:00 in the afternoon, I got to go to the hockey game.
Nice.
And didn't, answered to myself
on
all of that. But I built that franchise to the 5th largest franchise in North America out of 1,250. They asked me to be an international trainer. So I would go to Las Vegas and train new franchisees. And it was great. This was 2004. I had a huge, I was actually giving clients to other coaches and kind of building a nice exciting coaching firm.
Yep.
Things were going real well. And then 2008 happened. So,
yes.
And 2008 became me sitting down with my clients and saying, you've got to cut expenses, and one of them is me.
Okay, all right.
They're like, but no, I can't.
No, Paul, don't go.
The choice is you're going to pay me or you're going to feed your family. You're feeding your family.
Right.
So I ended up, one of my clients was a marketing agency. called Response Marketing out of New Haven.
Okay.
So I ended up
is that like a direct response marketing or what?
No,
kind of?
it was just a full service marketing agency. Okay. We had our clients were Logitech, McAfee, Stanley Black & Decker,
okay.
And did print, TV, video, all that kind of stuff. And so bought that agency. We were Inc. 500, 5,000 fastest growing companies for 3 years in a row. Built a great agency. And then there was a guy in there that wanted to be a partner, and it wouldn't support 3 partners. So I
there you go.
Sold it to those 2 partners.
Okay.
And then moved on to Eder to get me in the manufacturing business. And Eder was an Inc. 500, 5,000 company for 3 years as well. And
okay.
And then here I am.
And so what when you were looking to go in, you just mentioned you wanted to get into the manufacturing industry. What drove you to get in? I think that was like 2013 maybe?
Yeah. So Eder was a client too. So
okay.
They were another client of my coaching business. So
okay.
And again, 2 guys that were engineers that ran a great business. They grew from 2 million to 8 million and said, we're an $8 million company. We're 2 engineers, Now
what do we do?
What do we do? Right.
Sure.
So I really joined them in a kind of a marketing, business development, HR, sales kind of.
Because they were really focused in on building the product, growing the product,
right.
and doing that. And then you came in to say, okay, well, your engineering prowess can only take you so far. How do we get the message out and talk about this great engineering and all that stuff?
Exactly, and continue to grow and to provide that kind of that exterior brand to Eder Engineering as well. Again, the engineers love to Tom Eder loved to do the work.
Right.
Didn't want to do the didn't really like to do the other stuff.
The other stuff, sure.
Yeah.
And so what made you, so one of the things that I've seen kind of looking around the landscape in Connecticut and Western Massachusetts, especially in the last, say, like 5 to 10 years, has been a real resurgence in manufacturing. Have you seen that as well when you look around and a big growth kind of in the manufacturing space? That's something you're seeing out there? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you take a look at certainly what's happening here in Connecticut with, the big 3, right? So, Pratt & Whitney, you take a look at Sikorsky Electric Boat. We're very heavy in manufacturing around defense contracts. So anytime that we're in a situation where we're building defense contracts, that's a really good thing for manufacturing resurgence. And of course, when you look at that, there are you look at the supply chain dependencies of those 3 companies.
Right.
We're competing with them in some sense for workforce, but we're not because they're the ones that are providing for us the supply chain opportunities. Carey Manufacturing, we don't specifically do anything for those 3. We do a little work with Electric Boat on some handles and stuff. But when you look at how those companies are the ones that are going to that drive the manufacturing business here in Connecticut, but there is it's starting to come back.
Yeah. So. And how is that impacting? So just switching back to sort of, gone at Carey Manufacturing.
Yeah.
So that resurgence is impacting Carey and you guys are seeing kind of a growth in orders and the business is growing itself, would you say?
Well, a lot of our growth, we're a national/international company. So I sell internationally, distributors in Israel, and we sell, it's amazing that we actually sell parts into China.
Okay.
Because we actually compete with parts from China.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
But domestically, we're a lot of our business is outside the state of Connecticut.
Sure.
So we're all very, very familiar with the lack of consistent growth in the state of Connecticut, in the economy in the state of Connecticut, and in Connecticut we're always the I don't know if we're glass half full, glass half empty, or we don't know where the glass is. I think we just don't know
where the glass is. That could be part of it. Yeah.
So a lot of our business growth is driven from things that don't happen necessarily here in Connecticut.
Which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If you look at a lot of the other high growth areas, especially I know just kind of being in IT or that technology myself, and we talked about that a little bit. A lot of the big high growth areas, if you think about looking at like say a Seattle or whatever, we're looking at Amazon or Microsoft. The vast majority of those sales aren't to companies in Seattle or in Washington State, right? It's the ability not only to service your local market but to go global and international that really drives that. So I think it's pretty exciting to hear that Carey's doing stuff, outside the state and looking, just looking at expanding, right? Because all that sales to Israel, to China, whatever, that's supporting jobs and growth and innovation here in Connecticut. And who knows, maybe one of the Carey employees turns out to start their own business, much like the way Jack did, kind of learning from Pratt & Whitney. So I think that's great, to look at those sales outside. How did you end up selling back to China? Looking at other manufacturers, I'm sure they're wondering, hey, how do I grow my international footprint? How do I do that? How have you guys done that? How do you support that international growth?
I couldn't tell you that there's a coherent strategy on how to do that. It really is
luck.
The world's much smaller today.
Sure.
Right. I mean, everything's done now digitally.
Sure.
Right. So we'll just get RFQs on parts from all over the world, and they'll do it on Google searches. I mean, they're certainly looking for who supplies the parts. We'll get an RFQ, we'll respond, and so I don't have a targeted strategy to build business in China. Every once in a while I get a PO from China, or I have a customer that happens.
And then
to be in China,
when you get the RFQs, we'll take one step back because I'll get to that. I mean, are you guys investing in SEO, SEM? Like, how are you doing anything to drive that? Is it just like pure organic search luck? I mean, how does that happen?
So we have a very tiny budget around any digital marketing. So,
okay.
And our website is not really what it should be. So, so how am I
so
getting
success
it?
In spite of? Okay.
Trust me, it is in spite of. So, about a year ago, I invested in Sierra, a marketing specialist to help us with that business. So she's now Google AdWords certified.
Oh, wow.
So that allows us to at least do some stuff from that perspective.
So finding an area that's starting to show some promise and being successful, and then doubling down on your investment or tripling down and really trying to grow more.
And that's coming for us in 2020, 2021, where, right now we have an online store.
Sure.
I do about 1% of my business online. My goal is to get that in the next 2 years to 10 to 15%, because now everything goes to a customer service rep. I have to have a live customer service rep to process an order or to do a quote. So,
which is costly, not as fast. Right.
Well, and we live, and I explain this to my manufacturing floor folks all the time. We live in an Amazon society now.
Right.
Right. Amazon society means I go on, I click, I pay, and tomorrow it shows up.
Right.
And if it's not here tomorrow, it's here in 2 days.
Right.
It's here in 2 days or 3 days, and I'm aggravated because I had to wait 3 days. Right. And so with us, when we look at that and say we have an 8-week lead time, that was okay 55 years ago.
Not even 15, 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Let's go 3 years ago. That was okay. And that's not starting to be okay now. So we really have to look at our kind of manufacturing processes to be able to be more in stock and much quicker as it relates, and online. I don't want to talk to anybody. I need 150 of those handles. I need them here tomorrow. I just want to go on, order them, and have you ship them to me. And I'm not.
So would you say, kind of looking at that, would you say that speed is a differentiator, like it's a demanded differentiator from customers? Like if they look and see, well, Carey's going to be slower, then I'm not ordering from Carey. Is that something you guys are actively seeing and wanting to facilitate improving that speed?
Absolutely.
And so go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You get with lead times, we'll get that all the time. Customers saying, "Are you kidding me? That lead time, I need it sooner." Then they start searching for who
else can do it and who can get there faster. And I think it's funny you mentioned Amazon. I don't know if people even know that in other parts of the world, and China's a real good example with sort of like Alibaba and that marketplace, that it's not just here in the US where this Prime concept and this Amazon quick delivery concept, it's a international concept, not just here. And so it's interesting. I think other places are really looking to have that. And for them, getting something quick and speedy can be great. And I think that really, turns the question a little bit more to something I really wanted to get into, which I think is super interesting. I know Carey was recently highlighted about reshoring. It's been a big deal, something that came up in Senator Murphy's Manufacturing Advisory Council. You were down in DC. There's been a lot of publicity from Trump, from the US government, local media talking about it. And I think there's a relationship between the reshoring and the speed, right? So it's not just about the ordering process, but it's about being able to get the product made quickly and even do some customization so that your customer can get what they want when they want it quickly. So maybe just talk a little bit about why you guys, maybe start with why you offshored back in 2000, and let's get back to why we reshored.
Yeah, so we sent our manufacturing to China because we were in a race to the bottom. It was margins were eroding. it was impossible. It became impossible for us to manufacture here in the United States and make any kind of margin.
What kind of price differentiation was there between what China could do it for and what we could do it for? How much lower?
You were talking, you're talking a 50% premium to make it here. So,
okay.
I mean, if it's $1 in China, we're making it for $1.50, but somebody was selling it for $1.60. And if you're making it for $1.50 and selling it for $1.60,
you're not long for this world.
Not very much so.
No.
And so, from that sense, it just made sense, and it allowed us to compete. We survived that way for up until 2016. And in 2016, as the story goes, one of our engineers was presented with a problem by Jack Carey, so he started to do a little research, and he came across Trumpf and saw some of the equipment that they had, and what was
the problem? I think it was listen. I think one thing that I hope people are going to pull from listening to this podcast over time is what opportunities we don't often see that are right in front of our own face. And I think often you talked about the race to the bottom. I mean, the race to the bottom ends in a bloodbath for everybody.
Right.
And at some point, the differentiator has to be something other than price. Once you get into the commodity business, you're not going to be in business for too much longer. So what was the problem that he was trying to solve?
So we have a sister company, Floyd Manufacturing. So so Floyd Manufacturing shares the building with us. Floyd is a very, very different business. They do automotive work. But Jack oversees Floyd Manufacturing and Carey Manufacturing, and we have separate general managers and infrastructure. So Jack was looking at a picking up a part for Floyd Manufacturing in the automotive industry, went to the engineer and said, we're thinking about doing this part, but we don't have the equipment to be able to manufacture the part. In doing the research, Marty, our engineer, found Trumpf and basically said, hey, can you guys come in and talk to us about the possibility of doing this? We didn't get that business. We never bought that equipment.
Okay. That's all right. A lot of things start with failure.
But the Trump guy is a really good sales guy because every time he walks in, I have to steer him away from Jack because Jack's gonna buy something from him. So when Lucas came in, he kind of laid out some of the stuff that they had, and that provided Jack with the vision to say, hey, with this equipment, I can bring all of our manufacturing back. I can bring it back from China. I can bring it back here to Connecticut. And so it was, told, all in, it's been a $5 million investment in equipment to bring the manufacturing back.
Right. So, but I mean, obviously Jack's from here. Jack grew the business here, and as someone who has myself grown a business, I understand how you develop an attachment. But it wasn't just an emotional attachment to bring it back. There was a strong business play to bring it back. And talk a little bit about that. Like, what was the business advantage, or what did he see that could help Carey that was worth the investment in time, energy, and dollars to make it happen?
Right. So the only real driver to be able to do it is a financial driver, right? Yep. And the love of being a manufacturer. Right. When you're manufacturing your own product somewhere else and you're just ordering, cargo loads of it and shipping it out, it's really not much fun.
No,
right. It really isn't that much
sales
fun.
Organization.
And especially when you're Jack's a tinkerer, right? Just to give you when Jack Carey comes into work, usually stops in my office, asks me how things are going. I say good, and he goes out on the shop floor, and you'll find him in the assembly area sitting on a stool assembling handles because
That's what he loves doing.
I said to him, this is a part we're doing for McMaster-Carr. We need to get this out today. He goes, okay, I got it. He'll go out there and he'll sit with the assembly crew on a stool. And if you didn't know he was Jack Carey, you just think he was another assembly worker, you know? Or we have a problem in product development.
That's true passion.
And he wants to solve the problem. So he's out there and he's solving the problem. He's pulling the engineers in. He's re-engineering. He's continually taking cost out of the business from that perspective, while I'm worrying about kind of all the other stuff. So it really works out really well. But that's knowing that that's his personality, bringing the manufacturing back, he had to be able to do it. He had to make it had to be a good financial reason to do it. So it was really done all based around that. We could bring the products back here, we could be back in manufacturing, and we could do it in a cost-effective way. What it's led to is that we have control over quality. We have much, there's three things, right? Three things anybody's looking for: price, quality, delivery.
Yeah,
right?
Speed. That's
and you
right.
can have 2 out of 3.
That's right. That's right.
You want great quality and you want great delivery. You're not getting the cheapest price.
That's right.
And you want the cheapest price. I got to give up something. So
right.
What is it? Quality or delivery. Right?
Right.
So you can have 2 out of 3.
Right.
Right. So in looking at it, it was driven by price. It gave us the opportunity from a quality perspective to be able to control the quality of our parts, to be able to look at them, to re-engineer them, to again take cost out of them. But really on the delivery side, Bull Metals, Middletown, Connecticut, a client of ours, says, I want to come out and meet with you guys. Comes out and meet with us and says, see this part that we buy from you? On this part, we do a secondary operation where there's a loop on it. I'm going to use some technical terms.
Yeah, please.
We have to kick the loop.
Yeah, right? That's all right. People listening should get that. Yeah.
Put a little bend in the loop.
Yeah.
It's a secondary operation. We buy this from you, and we've been doing this now for years and years and years. And my engineer is sitting right there, and he looked right at him, and he goes, Steve Bull, he goes, Steve, we can do that for you. You're buying a CB 2275. We'll make it a 2276. We'll kick the loop, and we're done. He goes, this meeting's over. He goes, I don't need.
I got it. We're done.
This is awesome. He goes, and then he turns around and he looks at, I think it's his son that works for him. He goes, I can't believe we've been doing this for years. All that extra work. He said, we never asked the question. But if I'm manufacturing that in China, I can't do that, right? Because now I've got to go and do a different part number, and it's going to take me weeks to do it. So his next order that he got the next week, he didn't have to do that secondary operation in his shop.
And that's going to tighten the relationship. And no matter what business you're in, close customer relationships that are going to be repeat orders that are going to last for a long time, that's what you build your business on. And so having the opportunity to do that, like on the spot, on the fly, having the manufacturing, where you guys are too, probably allows you to demo things and do, sort of proof of concept samples and then generate orders, I would imagine.
Sure. Same thing happened. I went out to Ohio, met a company out there. Same thing. We're doing a secondary operation. I said, I've already solved that problem. I said, I'm gonna solve it for you. And what that leads to for us is that they're buying other products from our competitors as well, and they were buying this from a competitor. So then they start to look at it and say, well, let me just start here. Quote this, quote this, quote this, so we can grow. It's given us that ability to grow our business. The other example is that we had when we moved the manufacturing. Things weren't exactly the same, meaning that we're manufacturing to our catalog, but the China parts weren't necessary to catalog. So the China parts were going to a customer, and they're going there for 15 years, and the customer is integrating them into the product. Mistake we made. This is lessons learned.
All right, get your piece. If you're listening right now, get your pen and paper out.
Lessons you learn. Yeah. We assumed
that they were making it to spec?
They were making it to our spec, never checking the China part.
Seems like a very reasonable expectation, yeah.
Never really checking the China part. So when we went to manufacture our parts, we manufactured to our catalog print. It wasn't the same. So it would go to the customer would say, I don't know what you guys did, but,
this isn't the same thing.
And we're like, well, we made them in the USA. And they're like, I don't care, it doesn't work. So we had to do a lot of kind of, the story with this customer is on Monday they called us, they overnighted us the parts. We looked at them Tuesday, we realized what we did, went out and made the changes, re-prototyped the part on Tuesday, overnighted them back to the customer on Wednesday. Customer put the parts in their production line and said, you guys got it, this is great. We shipped 2,000 parts on Friday.
So in a week, from a Monday information through proof of concept, test, and reship in a week?
In a week.
I think that's just like, that's pretty, yeah. Now, people that have been doing this for a while, I think probably can understand how amazing
manufacturing in China is a week plus 17 more weeks. Right? That customer, I lost that customer.
Right.
If that happened, manufacturing in China, I lost that customer. So it's provided us with that opportunity. And then we have a lot of large companies that are now coming to us and saying, hey, now that you're manufacturing in the USA, make this part for me, I'll buy it for you. From you, make this part for me, I'll buy it from you. And they're Hardig Pelican case, General Dynamics. These are because the made in America to them is important in having a local business and that can manufacture here. So our development work now is all around customers coming to us with parts that they're buying from China that we can make, and asking us to make them here because they want it made in the USA.
So you said something I think was really important too. It wasn't just a tinkerer's dream to have it back here. It wasn't just sort of altruistic or want to make jobs back home or whatever. But financially, it made a lot of sense. Talk about that calculation, because $5 million. I know Carey is not a huge business. $5 million is a really large investment. So
very large. Investment.
Talk about how you get to that place where that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense in really taking a look at there. Well, there's two things. There's stainless steel and cold rolled steel. Two of the main. We do aluminum, we do brass, but most of what we do is with stainless and cold rolled. So on the stainless side, and by the way, all of this stuff is subsidized by the Chinese government. Materials subsidized by the Chinese government. Chinese government pays for electricity, pays for all of this. So in order for me to compete financially, I'm competing against a highly subsidized competitor. And I don't.
So you're saying the playing field isn't fair?
It is not. It is not fair. No. It's not level. tariffs are a great idea, and we can talk about that. But they're a great idea, but the way they were implemented wasn't really a great idea for Carey Manufacturing.
Right.
And so we don't have a level playing field. So we had to look at areas where we can compete. On stainless steel, we are very competitive. On cold rolled, we're not. So now we're looking at, and we're talking by a factor of about 30%. So my single largest customer 4 years ago was in Ohio, moved all their business to China, and I'm going to be out there next week.
Okay.
Visiting them again because I refuse to die as it relates to their business. But when she showed me what she was buying from China and I showed her what I could make it for, I looked at her and I said, well, buy that. I mean, I'm a business guy.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
You're not going to,
Do you think the gap is closing?
It is. It is closing. And the tariffs that President Trump put on products from China are helping us close that gap. The categories that Carey Manufacturing are in do not have direct tariffs on them right now. If they did, the playing field is now tilted in my advantage. And so when they started with tariffs, if they put tariffs on finished goods in my space, I'd be trying to hire people as quick as I could possibly can.
It'd be
and
good.
Buying machines and all of that, because I would now be cheaper than China parts and better quality and all of that. So they didn't. They put it on raw material, which meant my raw material costs went up. So I've spent the last year trying to absorb a 30% increase in raw materials.
So just back that up, but I'm not sure everyone, I think a lot of people listening may understand, but just for those that don't, we'll explain the difference between the tariffs on raw materials versus like the finished goods and what the differentiator is there.
Sure. So if you put tariffs on raw materials, steel, aluminum, you're now taking the price of foreign raw materials, increasing them by 10 or 25%, whatever the tariff group put it on there. What that does is it makes everybody look to the U.S. for their sources. Now, we've always sourced all of our metals in the U.S., and we've tried to source them locally. So we're not buying all that other stuff that now just got a lot more expensive.
Right.
So in simple economics, supply and demand. So when the demand now moves to the United States, it's very difficult to create supply in the metal manufacturing business. You can shut down a steel plant in a day. It takes you a couple of years
to turn it back on. Sure,
So what happened is the demand went up in the U.S. for raw material. So if you are a manufacturer of raw materials and your demand is increasing, what do? You make hay when the sun's shining. You raise your prices.
So just to simplify this down to brass tacks, if you were buying raw materials in the U.S., putting tariffs on raw materials coming in from out of the U.S. drove up prices for people already buying it in the U.S. because U.S. prices went up.
My raw material
So actually, from a Carey Manufacturing selling the finished goods, it actually hurts you because your cost just went up. And to close the loop, I have a feeling what you're going to tell me is if I was importing my raw materials from China, let's say, my cost of that materials went up. So I had two options. I could go and buy US prices, which actually now just went up.
Right.
Or my other option was, just keep buying the raw material in China, but now move the production to China too. So now I'm not even importing the raw materials. I'm importing the finished goods, which don't have the tariff.
That's correct.
So I've actually, in my efforts to make something better, it sounds like, and I mean, this is not a political commentary, but it just sounds like the implementation totally screwed it up.
No good deed goes unpunished.
No good deed goes unpunished. So we really haven't done it right.
But when you look at,
good concept.
But you can't, but you're not, you don't expect your government when implementing, global policy to worry about what's happening at Carey Manufacturing.
No, but I mean, right.
But we certainly can advocate for that. So again, as we, and it's, small business owners spend most of their time trying to survive against external factors that are happening out of their control while trying to keep the lights on and all of that. So if again, had it gone the other way and had tariffs gone on finished goods, it would have been a much different story for us. Now, I believe that the tariffs that are supposed to be implemented this month will include finished goods because we're starting to see other manufacturers raise prices on China goods. I haven't seen it yet from our manufacturer in China. But if that happens, again, I've got two problems because I'm still buying some stuff in China. I'm not 100% manufacturing. But that's the bad problem. The good problem is that number one customer that I couldn't compete with anymore, their costs just went up 30%, and I'm back
now
in the game.
You're back in the game. Yeah, Carey's back. That's good.
I waited long enough.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about the financial calculation for bringing the stuff back to reshoring, and I don't know if we finished that up or if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, no, it just had to be there economically. We had to be able to compete. So we have on the kind of the stainless side, we're competitive. On the cold rolled steel, we're not. So our pitch there is really made in America, right? Quality product. Right, you can have
customization.
You can have 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Right. So, and again, some of those customers that I explained are buying the cold rolled product, so they're paying a premium price over China, but for that premium price, they're getting a better quality product,
and
better customer service, and they're buying. They're supporting the local supply chain. They're supporting USA business and USA growth, and there's really something to that, and really is something.
You think that people do care and want to do that?
Well, listen, they care. They care if the price differential isn't great enough to be small enough so they can. Right. At the end of the day.
Well, they've got to stay. They've got to stay in business too, right? So ultimately, you got to keep it within range.
Right.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So I think that's been super interesting. Let's talk about another thing that comes up a lot in manufacturing, which is recruiting and retention of the employee base. And so, what's Carey doing, to recruit and retain high quality employees?
Yeah. So we for a very long time have been very, very active in the in kind of the workforce development community. So we have a philosophy at Carey Manufacturing that any organization would like to bring a group of students or people who are interested in manufacturing on a tour. You call us, we're happy to host it.
Okay.
So we host tours on a regular and consistent basis.
What age groups would you host
We've
for?
done middle school, so we've had middle school manufacturing camps come out to as part of their week-long camp in the summer.
Sure.
Tour a manufacturer. We'll do a cookout for them. We'll do hot dogs, hamburgers, and and we have if you think of, we used to manufacture in Connecticut, and then we stopped, and then we had to restart again. So when we restarted again, we have a very young manufacturing force on kind of workforce on our manufacturing floor. Our Trump machines are run by a 24-year-old woman.
Okay.
So that we hired out of the technical school system. We just actually hired a younger sister.
Oh, nice.
They're both brilliant. And and besides, we're all family.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
you guys have learned hiring in the family works, exactly. So why not replicate?
So we have a aging workforce, because on the Amatom side, we have people that have been there for a very long time, and we have a very young workforce. So when you bring those kids in, you bring the younger workers. You bring the young workforce in.
Have you found that to be successful? I mean, I think people would love to have a younger workforce, right? There's obviously you read the articles as well as I do talking about that. So how has that worked out for you guys?
So at the risk of giving up all my secrets,
yes.
So when you do that and you have that kind of philosophy, and you're willing to help, people grow from a workforce development perspective, people who run those programs know what you can do. So when we need to hire somebody, we'll call the people that run those programs and say, we need to hire somebody. We're looking entry level. Who's your best student? Oh, I know who to send you.
Gotcha.
And they send us the cream of the crop of their classes to say, I've got a great job for you. You get
and not only cream of the crop, but probably the cream of the crop in the areas that Carey cares about the most, right? Because now they've got to know you. So it might not be like who I don't even know how they measure the objectively best student, but it's the person that knows the machines or the processes that you guys have that they know to send you to reduce your retraining or custom training, I would imagine.
Correct. So from a workforce development standpoint, we have staffing challenges like everybody else.
Sure.
I mean, I've often said Connecticut is a workforce and jobs in search of a workforce.
Yes.
We have lots of jobs. We just don't have a trained workforce. But I think it's, in the manufacturing space, it's incumbent upon the manufacturers to work with the educators and our education system to make sure that we're providing the right curriculum and right opportunities to meet those demands of the workforce, right? I can't sit there as a manufacturer and say, I need workers, and not put my skin in the game.
Right.
And say,
what kind of workers do you need?
And so, so we serve on board, I'm on the Tunxus Community College Advanced Manufacturing Board.
Okay.
I'm on the Bristol Technical Advisory Committee Board. Where Pete Egan, our director of HR, is, I went to a breakfast with Pete Egan, and we got the Employer of the Year. And so I was my first year there. I thought this was great. And Pete was kind of like poo-pooing it. I'm like, Pete, Pete, I'm the employer of the year. This is great. So then I take the award to go put in our case and realize that we've been the employer of the year for the last 4 years.
Okay.
So well, what are you like, the Tom Brady?
Right. Doesn't care anymore.
Development? You just won your 6th MVP out of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. What's new? What's new?
So, but that's, that's.
Is there anything that you think Carey's doing that's unique or interesting or particularly interesting to recruit? I mean, one thing that I noticed kind of looking at your guys' LinkedIn was a large number of like females in the workforce. And I think, just for somebody like myself, for example, who listens to Warren Buffett a lot, he talks about how, the growth of women in the workforce is just going to be a huge driver because there was for so many years so much untapped talent, energy, and potential. It seems like you guys are found a way to recruit that. Any special, secrets there or anywhere, that you guys think is interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting. So CNN Money did an article on Carey Manufacturing about women in the workforce.
Okay.
And how, at this small manufacturer, women rule the floor. And on a manufacturing floor. And when they asked us, my comment was, I wish we did it on purpose.
Okay.
Because we didn't. What we did, and I think what we did is reflective of what I think every employer should do, is that we hired the best person that came through the door.
Sure.
Right? We really looked at what do we need to have done? Who's going to be the most qualified person to do that? And that's irrespective of anything. Never mind gender. It's of anything. And then how do we have have an environment where that person can grow and thrive and do all of that.
Sure.
So Millie, when I was talking about the 24-year-old that runs, she couldn't find a job because she couldn't lift 50 pounds. That the requirements are, if you're going to work in a manufacturing floor, you have to lift 50 pounds. Well, we found a guy that can lift 50 pounds. Millie can tell somebody to lift 50 pounds really well.
That's right. That's
really
right.
well. And so if you got to look at some kind of that criteria to make.
What are some of the legacy things that we're looking for in jobs that maybe we don't need?
Yeah.
Right.
And so you can't lift 50 pounds, but you tell him to do it. And it's the same thing. We have we hired somebody to work on a second shift to run those machines, and she doesn't weigh 110 pounds soaking wet. Right. And but how does she change 4x6 sheets of aluminum or steel on our machines? She tells him to do it.
Someone else could do it.
Can you change that sheet for me? Right. He can't run that machine.
Right.
She can.
So
she can't change the sheet.
Little teamwork makes the dream work kind of deal.
And by the way, he's doing something else. He has another job, but he comes over for 15 minutes to do that. So
find a way to make it work.
And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have hired these people, and we wouldn't be where we are today because they're brilliant.
They're really driving.
Really
that.
smart. They're smart people. Yeah.
That's exciting. And so just sort of some takeaways on that I heard was really engaging in the training system early. Making sure to do it intentionally, kind of thinking outside the box and not pigeonholing yourself into like these job descriptions that might be looking for too much, right? Sounds like you can kind of streamline
hire talent, and just it's like an NFL draft strategy, right? Take the best player available,
and then just go from there.
And then figure out what you're going to do.
But if you have good people, they'll work it out.
Right. So we were just trying to take the best player available. So,
that's exciting. All right, let me make sure I got everything I want to look at. So, I know what I want to ask you. You guys have made this investment with Trump, but there's so many competing demands on where to invest dollars. R&D, machines, recruiting, marketing, sales. How does Carey determine where to invest dollars at any given point? Because there's a limited pool of dollars. How do you look at that? What's the evaluation you guys do there?
Yeah, so you're looking at there really have to be the way we look at it. It has to be really financially driven, right? Okay. So if we're going to invest in a piece of equipment, where are we going to be able to have some savings in either real dollar savings, labor savings, efficiency savings? If it's taking, we still have hand benders, right? So if it's taking us, if the cycle time on bending a handle is 30 seconds and we can find a machine that'll do it in 3, you take a look at, all right, it's 5-year. What's my ROI?
Right,
where's my payback? What's my ROI?
Yep.
How is this machine necessarily going to fit into that? So we look at it a lot from that perspective. We do some strategic stuff that says, listen, we don't have this equipment. If we did this, it would get us into this market. And so, we do the classic, the vacuum effect, right? We buy the equipment and then fill it with work in the market. We don't go get the work and then buy the equipment. Right. That would be the easy way to do it. We buy the equipment. Jack turns around and says, I just bought this. Can you find work for it? Thanks. Yeah,
get this machine working.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So we do a little bit of that, but that helps us from that perspective. But it really is, it's kind of looking at, like, we're taking delivery of a new piece of equipment today that will cut our cycle times down, which means that we're getting work through faster.
Right. Cycle time reduction, Paul's kind of, I mean, is a more straightforward calculation.
Right.
What do you guys do on stuff that's maybe a little bit softer, like maybe investment in information technology, investment in marketing? Like you said you made an investment in marketing.
Yeah.
Some personnel, some working on SEO. I don't know what you guys are doing kind of like for ERP or IT, but a lot of that's not as easy to initially calculate, right? It's more saying, hey, we have to do this to eventually get some result out of it. How do you guys look at those harder to immediately quantify investments?
Well, we really don't. I mean, just because of the situation we're in and investing $5 million in capital equipment,
sure,
there's not a lot of those opportunities, right? So and what I mean,
well, you got Jack to open it up when you hiring Sienna, right?
Right?
So there's something.
Yeah, I need an ERP. I need a new website. I need, there's, and I'm not, they're there. I know they're there. I know what I'm going to have to do that. I just don't have the resources right now to be able to do that. So, but we look at it, that said, right, if I was a year or two out from now where a lot of this capital equipment's coming off my books and it's going to free up a lot of cash flow, I mean, I'd really look at it from a strategic advantage. I mean, really, how is this going to help us, be more efficient, right, to be able to, we have to look at reducing lead times, being more responsive, having tools that are easier for, we're going to make it easy for customers to buy from us.
Sure.
Right. And to be able to do that. But how does that set me up for success in the future? And, how does that, again, moving 10% of my sales to the website,
right,
to go to 15, to go to 20, to go to 25, where, you click a button, an order just goes to my shipping department, shipping sends it out.
Right.
Never touched by and when we send an invoice, never touched by a customer service rep. So I'm looking at, those, and I don't look at those as necessarily as cost reduction items as much as I look at if I free up that customer service rep, they can pick up the phone and start calling customers and saying, how you doing? How can we help you?
What's going to actually deepen the relationship?
A revenue growth. From a revenue growth perspective.
Yep.
So, again, I think, looking at, you have to look at investments those two ways, right? Am I going to be able to take cost out of the business, or is it going to allow me to give me the platform to be able to grow
the business
to the next level, and and everage them against those criteria.
Kind of right.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, that's what we did with the large capital equipment. It allowed us to really to compete, not necessarily take cost out of the business. I mean, there are parts that we make here that we could buy cheaper in China. That, we know that. But we like making them here.
Yeah, I got that.
And our customers and actually our customers don't care.
Right.
If we didn't deliver, they just pick up the phone and buy it from China. They wouldn't care. But it's important to us to be able to do that and to continue to support our organization. So.
How would you describe the culture at Carey Manufacturing, and do you think that that's a contributor to your success?
So the culture is kind of interesting because it's kind of evolved over this 30-year period. So. In really describing Jack is a different kind of leader. I mean, without a doubt, he runs the organization, and he manages the financial aspect of the organization. We have a very experienced is the right word, senior leadership team.
Okay.
So we're
seen a few winters.
We're not competitive, which means that, there's not a lot of drama as it relates to the senior management team with problem solving and all of that. We're all there, we're all in the same boat and we're all rowing in the same direction.
Huge.
And we're fun. I mean, we're fun. We, July 3rd, we brought in a Mr. Softy truck.
Oh, nice.
For all of our employees. We'll do, we'll send out something that says next week we're doing a cookout. We're doing, hot dogs and hamburgers.
Did you guys have a lemonade stand at one of your? Did I see that?
We did. We did.
So local kids selling lemonade.
Set up a lemonade stand.
That's awesome.
We have a garden. It's our
like a community garden.
I give Sierra full credit for this.
Okay.
Our HR director is Pete Egan, EGAN. It's the Garden of Egan.
So I like it.
That was Sierra's doing. But it's huge. It's a huge garden where we grow vegetables, and Pete will send out an email that says, we're harvesting squash today. Who wants squash? And he put, employees write their name down, and he puts bags of squash and delivers it around the shop. And so
that's pretty cool.
So very, and we'll have shop employees go, hey, we haven't had a cookout in a while. When are we having a cookout?
Boom, and then the cookout materializes.
Next week
I
we're
love
having
it.
a cookout.
I love it.
We look at the calendar and we'll do things like if it's potato chip day, we walk around and give everybody a little bag of potato chips.
You go.
And just, and it's, people want to have fun at work.
Yeah.
And listen, what we do isn't sexy, right? We make catches, latches, and handles. I mean, it's, we're a manufacturing environment. So by giving people the opportunity to, and out by the garden, there's a bunch of picnic tables.
I think at the end, that's important. Listen, I mean, what I've seen, right? People want to be in an environment where they think that they can contribute to something that's going to build something. And like you said, have fun doing it. And there's a lot of competition out there for people. So giving them an environment, I think, is awesome. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job with that. So just as we start to wrap up, before we get into our rapid fire question, I'd like to ask this. Who's kind of your white whale customer? Who's somebody that's out there where you dream about kind of landing them as a customer? Do you have somebody like that?
This is a great question. We're kind of going through that. I mean, I certainly love to get, Allied out in Ohio was our single largest customer, and then they moved all their work to China. So,
you'd like them to reshore also.
I'd love to get them back.
Okay.
And working with my rep out in Ohio to get them back. We're really working on a strategy with large original equipment manufacturers, like large OEMs. So we're looking at, if you think of large music cases and kind of the music case industry, we make all those latches and handles for all of that industry, but we're not really penetrated into that. So we look at it from a kind
industry
of from
standpoint.
from that industry standpoint. We'd like to be in that, in those case manufacturings. They're our target. We have kind of target customers out there that buy from our competitors. Our competitors are nice enough to put all of their major customers on the website. So we appreciated that.
That's very nice of them. So if someone out there listening either knows someone at Allied, although you guys have a pretty good in there, but in the music case manufacturing,
and then there's a company, Zero Manufacturing, out on the West Coast that buys tons of handles and latches and catches. Again, Sierra, who does our business development, has her target list that she's out working there on a regular basis.
All right, well, I want to give you never know who's out there. So Zero Manufacturing, you said, but anybody who's got a latch or a handle, you'd love to talk to them and see if it's something you could do.
We do a lot of work with McMaster Carr, and we just picked up 14 new lines from McMaster Carr. So we're excited about that relationship and kind of building that relationship with them as well.
So anyone listening that likes a quality latch and handle at a competitive price.
Now hinges too. So if you ever, it's like a hinge that closes a barn door. If you buy that from McMaster Carr,
you're getting it from
right
Carey?
Here in Cromwell, Connecticut.
Nice. That's pretty exciting. All right, well, let's go. Right before we wrap up, I like to do a rapid fire round of questions, right?
Okay.
So take on some quick questions.
Great.
Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox.
Nice. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Exotic destination.
All right. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
Neither.
What sedan? All right. And
I own an SUV. I used to own a sports car. I now drive a sedan.
There you go. And when you go swimming, go to the beach or go to the pool?
Beach.
All right. There you go. If you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what else would you choose to do? If you weren't doing what you're doing at Carey Manufacturing, what's your other? What would you be doing?
Great question. There's a couple things. I had gone down this path and it didn't work out real well, but politics, elected official, at a much greater level. And then the other one is voiceover. Voiceover work.
Oh, like radio voiceover work?
Radio voiceover work. So
nice.
That's going to be my retirement gig, is to have a voiceover studio and just, sit there and do voiceovers and get paid to do that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. What's a book you've read that's really impacted you?
So there's a book it's out of publication. It's called The Executive Odyssey.
Okay.
I read it when I was 25 years old. I went and bought all the books I could find that are out of circulation. And it's a book that had a tremendous impact on me.
Executive Odyssey.
The Executive Odyssey. It's if you're in your 20s or 30s and thinking about what you want to do for your career, it's the book. I've read thousands of books, and this book I've highlighted, earmarked, dog tagged.
So what does someone have to do to get one of your private stash of the
That's a good question. I don't even know if I have them anymore.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna follow up on that.
It's a box because I moved, so it's probably in a box somewhere.
All right.
Somewhere.
And our last question: what's one thing that you've learned later in your career, or even later in your life, that you think to yourself, "Man, if I had just known that 20 years ago, or whatever, what is that? What's that one thing?"
I think what I've learned later in life that I wish I knew is that it really is the because I actually learned this kind of through that whole business coaching that kind of business is business, right? And if you understand the basic principles of a business, what you do and where you work and in what kind of vertical you decide to work in. In other words, you don't have to have an entire career in one in one industry.
Right.
Things are applicable in other industries, and the ability to understand that and to synthesize that and learn that quickly is something that's helped me a lot later on that I wish I knew when I was younger. That it's all basically the same stuff.
Yep.
It's all basically the same stuff. It's just got a different kind of twist to it. And once you understand the foundation of it, you should be able to grasp the intricacies.
Yeah, got
thank
it.
you. Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
And of it on and be successful. So because to move from where I've moved from owning a marketing agency to being in manufacturing, and I'm always amazed.
You see the common thread.
But I'm always amazed at how quickly things are coming to me, and
cool.
I wish I learned that earlier. That would work, and maybe I needed the experience to know that. I don't know.
Well, you got to know.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to reach you to learn more about Carey Manufacturing and what you guys do, what's the best way to do that?
If you can't find me, you're not looking. It's careymanufacturing.com.
Carey Manufacturing.
Carey. So it's P Lavoie at careymfg.com. LinkedIn. I've got a large LinkedIn presence, and group there. So it's Paul S. Lavoie, to kind of distinguish me from
the other Paul Lavoies.
Yeah,
well, we'll definitely link all that in the show notes. So anyone who's kind of watching this, if you're watching it on YouTube, you'll see it down below. If you're listening to it on your favorite podcast, check the notes, and all those contacts will be in there. And our final question is, given everything we've talked about today, what do you think is the one key thing you'd like to give listeners as a takeaway? Of all the things we've talked about, what's kind of the one, big key takeaway you think people should take from our conversation?
We talked about a lot of things. I mean, if you really look at, I kind of talk about our the reshoring efforts and taking a manufacturing business and taking it from China and moving it back to the United States. The thing I tell everybody is that it's really a lot harder than you think it is. And it's and you're gonna you've got to be flexible, and you have to really understand how to react quickly to things that are going to happen when you do that. And because we're actually going from zero to building a manufacturing business, right? Again, so I'm building a manufacturing business again with people who have never built a manufacturing business, because I've got family members that are in there that have never worked anywhere else but Carey Manufacturing.
Sure.
So it's understanding. It's really harder than things are really harder than you think they are. The other thing I've learned is that I overestimate how much I can get done in a day and underestimate how much we accomplish in a month.
Yep.
So when I look back on a month and what we've done, I'm like, wow, we really did a lot. But every day I sit there and go, I didn't do
what did we do today?
I didn't do anything today. So and that's the other thing is if you have a plan, you're executing that plan, you get up every day and you're working towards that plan. At the end of the month, you're going to step back and say, look at the progress we've made.
Something. That's great. I think that was awesome. One of the things I'm going to walk away from this with is pretty simply, I think everything we've talked about, whether it was the reshoring efforts, whether it was the way we talk about recruiting, I think I really heard you kind of reiterate something that sometimes people forget to think about, which is think outside the box. We get so used to the job description is what it is and trying to get everyone in the job description instead of realizing, well, we're filling the job description isn't our goal. Getting the job done for our customers is the goal. So let's kind of relook at that. The same thing with the reshoring, right? We wanted to get these. We want to get these products. The end goal was getting a customer a quality product at a good speed. We were doing it one way for a long, long time. Well, what's another way we could do it that maybe has some other advantages? I think that's such an awesome kind of takeaway to remember is sometimes just take a step back and remember the objective isn't to execute the steps, it's the objective itself. So
correct.
That was awesome.
How are we going to get it done?
That's awesome. Right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show.
It.
I really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
All right.